You are listening to WPHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk radio.
Reaching all the way back to 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition. Here is your host of Fate Radio, Kat Hobson.
Good evening and welcome to Fate Mag Radio. I am your host, Kat Hobson, and you are listening to us on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. Tonight's show is really something else, and I'm so excited. This is a gentleman whose work I've been familiar with for, some time now, and I've never had the chance to speak with him. He is an educator, which A, qualifies him for combat pay in the best of schools, but B, he has worked in urban schools where there sometimes is a bit of a violent tendency. He's written multiple books on that topic. One is the Urban Educator Survival Guide, and then the Urban Educator Survival Guide, School Teachers in Violent Classrooms. I am so knocked out by that. He has other books, one of which is Service, A Soldier's Journey, Counterintelligence, Law Enforcement, and the Violence of Urban Education. And his newest, if I'm not mistaken, is I Am Human, and We Are Not What We Think We Are, which fascinates me. I think that Denniss Nappi is one of my favorite people, just because he's brave enough to teach. I have a daughter who's an educator. I have a friend who is a special education teacher in a school where they send those they deem uneducable. So aside from his spiritualism, his knowledge, his interest in helping others, his interest in bringing people into the fore with his care and compassion, really, and is being convinced that we all have psychic abilities that we can utilize to help others. I mean, it's just amazing to me, and he's here. So, Denniss, welcome to Paranormal Experience. Thank you for being here.
Kat, thank you so much. Thank you for that introduction. It was very kind of you. It's been quite the journey for me, to say the least.
Well, I'm sure. I have got to tell you that what you do, aside from the Seiker Podcast and Sixth Sense Media and the blogging and the journaling and all of that, really ties in with being able to do your career. And not only that, you were a counterintelligence officer in the Army, so you have all kinds of experiences with different schools of thought and methodologies to be able to communicate. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it's been a neat journey, and it seems that every stage of this experience builds on the next one. I never would expect it all to tie in, but especially with what I'm doing now, it gives me having worked in counterintelligence allows me to kind of dissect some of the conspiracy stuff that we get into, and then being an educator allows me to present it in a way that I hope is easy to digest for my listeners and my followers. So everything just kind of falls into place, and it's neat the way that works out.
Well, that path is laid out for us, whether we want to acknowledge that someone's doing it or not.
You're absolutely right, Kat. I struggle with that. I do, but that definitely runs through my head. You know, it's the old, am I in control or is somebody else?
Control's an illusion. You should know
That's
that.
True. I do, but I still fight it. I still fight it, believe me.
We all fight that.
Yeah.
Well, how did you get into counterintelligence when you went into the Army?
So when I was in
I'm
high
sorry,
school.
that fascinates me.
It sounds like it's this sexy title, counterintelligence, and that's what kind of drew me into it. I was 17, and actually I was watching the X-Files, and it was like when it first started. I was watching it. I was like, I have no idea what I want to do with my life. I watched my first episode of the X-Files. I said, I want to do that. I want to be a special agent with the FBI and look for UFOs and aliens. And I guess about a year later, I was exploring options with the military. My recruiter's talking about all these different things, and he throws out counterintelligence. I said, I have no idea what that is, but I want to do it. It just sounded cool, and he starts explaining to me what the training would entail. You're going to learn surveillance. You're going to learn, how to investigate espionage and national security crimes, and I was hooked. So it took a while to get, everything situated, get the seats into place. But I eventually, I first went to school and was trained as an intelligence analyst. And I kept pushing and pushing for the agent seat. And eventually they sent me through the course, and it was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it changes the way, everything we do changes our perspective on the world. As a soldier, you view things differently. And then as an intelligence soldier, you start questioning everything. Is this deceptive? Are they lying? Are they setting us up? Can we verify what they're saying? And you start thinking in those types of terms and strategically, how can we manipulate this situation? Are we being manipulated? Where are we vulnerable? And those thoughts just cycle through your head over and over, and it eventually changes just how you see the world.
Well, how long ago was that?
That journey started in 1998. I did a deployment to Bosnia in 2003, and I exited the military in 2004.
So you actually were when things were pretty fired up.
Yeah, I was in the National Guard when 9/11 happened, and then I deployed a year after that. But my deployment, there was stuff going on, but they weren't shooting at us. We were in a spot where, I didn't go through what our soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan went through. Mine was more the mental stress. We knew there were cells out there. We identified them collecting on us. We were playing a chess game, trying to catch these guys before they were able to do anything. And we did. We were able to stop. And, so it was mentally challenging for me and stressful. But like I said, they weren't shooting at us, so I won't even pretend that it's as bad as what other soldiers have endured.
Well, I tell you what, I think that anybody who willingly goes, and everybody now is willing, as volunteers, willingly goes and signs on the line, is a hero. I don't care if you're being shot at. I don't care if you're scrubbing dishes. I don't care what you're doing. You make a choice to go and, because you don't know where you're going to be assigned. Recruiters say one thing, but that's not binding.
Right.
And, everybody who does that is a hero.
Well, thank you. Yeah, they are all the service members. None of us know what we're getting into when we sign for the first time. But what we do have in common is we want to serve our country, and that's commendable.
Yes, it is. And just so you know, I have a friend who's a real X-Files guy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He retired from the FBI after over 20 years, and he's doing, actually he's on Gaia now. He does all kinds of stuff with Nori and other people, but his name is John D'Souza, and he really is the X-Files guy.
He's something special. I remember he was a guest on your show. I remember we were connected online about a year ago. Yep. Fascinating guy.
Fascinating man. And, I think that going into education, I know you have a master's in education.
Right.
And what did you think when you came out of the military and you wound up teaching in urban classrooms and things were so bizarre?
It was tough, Kat. I actually went from the military And then I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. So I ran my own detective agency for about 3 years.
That's right. I missed that. I'm sorry.
And then, no, don't. It's okay. I mean, my resume is long and confusing
Very.
sometimes. Yeah. And then I was a police officer for a few years. And I left the police department after I had an incident with a 12-year-old boy who was trying to commit suicide. And I was able to talk him down, and I really connected with him. I said, I'm not serving the community the way I'm meant to. And I resigned, and I got hired as a Philadelphia teaching fellow. And basically, they bring you on, they train you up for 4 weeks in the summer, and they'll give you a discount to go get your master's degree, and they throw you in the most challenging classrooms in the school. Mm-hmm. So I'm a special education teacher by trade and training. So I was in Southwest Philadelphia in a middle school emotional support classroom with very violent kids, right? A month off the police department. It was a major culture shock for me. And these students, these children, despite threatening to shoot me, despite trying to stab me with pencils, standing up, trying to jump me, threatening to blow up my car. I mean, this was every day. I've tried to find ways to connect with them because they were crying out for help from a city that had rejected them. These kids had such great needs their entire lives, and nobody was there. They 8th graders that couldn't read at all, couldn't do math. I didn't have books. I didn't have paper. I felt like I was in the third world. I'd go to my administration for help, and they would give me nothing. I couldn't have I was like, what do I teach? Well, we'll have your curriculum in like a week or two. I said, but school's already started. What am I supposed to teach? You'll figure it out. The books I had pornographic images drawn all in them, and that's great to give to middle school kids, right? I mean, it was a disaster. So after that is when I started writing my first book, and that's when I really started to find my voice publicly, because before it was all, cloak and dagger, don't tell anybody who I am, let's be quiet about it. I said, no, people need to know. In America, we're dealing with schools like this, and this is with No Child Left Behind, and we started – what I was saying was that's when I kind of really started digging was if they're not investing in our students today, what does that tell you about our country's investment in our future? And I was very concerned about it. And that's kind of what started my journey, at least publicly.
That is something that probably coming from a police department environment where you were able to do certain things in situations where you felt threatened, into a classroom environment where your hands are basically tied, that had to be bizarre too. I mean, because really you can't defend yourself.
It was hard. I did defend myself when I had to, and I would just write it up and document it and hand it over. I had a kid attack me one day, and I wrote the whole thing up, and I gave it to the school police officer. It was like I said, look, hey, I wrote the police report for you. It was 2 pages long. I said, what's our next step? And he looked at it, and he goes, oh, I don't want to read all that. Why don't you write me a paragraph summary, and I'll tell you what we can do. I said that right then. I was like, all right, forget it. Here's the report. Go file your paperwork. I'll handle it myself. So it was difficult. As I moved on, my verbal judo got better, and I got better at de-escalating students before they would take a swing. But there's been times throughout my career where I'd get confronted when I moved into different districts. In Philadelphia, it's a different ballgame. But when I moved out of Philadelphia, and I'd get confronted with a student, and all the cell phone cameras would come out, and my training as a cop's telling me how to react. But my mind screaming, you're a teacher, dude. There's cameras. You need to walk away. And I would just go lock myself in my classroom and have like a little breakdown because it was just such a conflict for me. It was tough.
It had to be because you're a very compassionate person. Mm-hmm. And it shows through now. Were you still able to exhibit that to them? Were you able to reach out in that manner to them, or did that just make you more vulnerable?
No, my goal was to show. At first, I didn't want my students to know that I was a former cop, and that lasted all of about a day. When a kid started throwing firecrackers in a classroom that I thought were gunshots, and he came running at me, and I had him pinned up and sprawled on the wall in about 30 seconds. And like, oh, dude's a cop. So the secret was out real quick. So then my goal became to show my students that